Lamar Jackson arrived in Baltimore for day one of the Ravens workouts, and it left some national media members scrambling.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome in to the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. On today's show, in the final part of the show, we'll dive into some more draft talk for the Ravens. We get closer and closer and closer with each passing day. So we'll talk a little bit more about the Ravens' needs and everything going into what their draft strategy could be. In the second part of the show, we'll talk about Lamar Jackson arriving for day one of Baltimore Ravens workouts and sending Mike Florio scrambling in the process. But in the first part of the show, Lamar Jackson's arrival at the Ravens facility, it had Dan Orlovsky eating his words from literally less than 10 minutes before the Ravens announced Lamar was there. So we'll talk about that in the first part of the show. Just craziness with Lamar. And again, I feel like the national media was just kind of licking their chops for Lamar to not be there. They had set it up all week. Oh, if Lamar's not there, we're going to have to talk about it. No, he needs to be there and all this. And again, as I talked about on yesterday's show and on, even just like Locked On Ravens PM yesterday in the squad show, this was not just a Lamar Jackson thing, right? The veteran leaders who ended up showing up, right? Lamar, Derrick, Roquan Smith, Marlon, Humphrey, like all these guys. You have good players, elite players on your roster that are not Lamar Jackson. And I think that, again, when Lamar's the quarterback, he's the star. I understand that. Like, he is the brightest star on your team. But again, like Kyle Hamilton's another one. Like, all these guys, they showed up as well. So shout out to them. There was a big tone set and a message sent, and it was great. But there was some controversy in this whole thing as well, where, again, Lamar shows up, he silences his haters. It's great. But there were different angles that some of these, I guess you can call them media haters, national media haters, took. And it was very interesting. So we'll start with Dan Orlovsky. Dan Orlovsky was on Get Up on ESPN, and they were asking quarterback questions. And this was before Lamar, the video was posted and all that. And this was at 8:18 a.m. Dan Orlovsky said, quote, "I'm not going to overreact to him not being there. Maybe he gets there in the next day or two, but it certainly sounds like that's not going to be the case." And then talked a little bit about Lamar's season last year, the situation with Baltimore this year, it being a new era with the Ravens, et cetera, et cetera. And then Orlovsky said, quote, "I'm not going to react to him not being there because we'll give him some time, but I want him there." So this sounds like Orlovsky knows that Lamar's not going to be there, and he has some like information on it. Again, this at 8:18 a.m. Then at 8:24 a.m., the Ravens post a video of Lamar Jackson walking into the facility. Not even 10 minutes later, Lamar Jackson is shown walking into the facility, and that's that. Like, Lamar literally made Dan Orlovsky eat his words. It's just unbelievable. Again, I don't understand what in the world is going on here with Dan Orlovsky. It's a horrible look, first of all. I mean, I tried to like rack my brain for ways where I'm like, what was Dan Orlovsky trying to do here where it wasn't him trying to put this out without any sourcing or information? I don't know. Maybe he just needs better sources. I don't know if he was sourcing it. The only way that I ended up coming up with is to like what the thought process was here that didn't involve something like that is if Dan was going off of all the national conversation and there was no sources or whatever involved. But either way, like, it's irresponsible here, in my opinion, because again, it's another narrative that is being formed. And it's something where like, you can't just wait until like there's something out there about whether Lamar showed up or not. You just have to put out there that, oh, well, certainly sounds like he's not going to be out there and it's not going to be the case. And then boom, 6 minutes later, he's shown walking into the facility. I mean, this is generally, and we'll get into like the life of Lamar Jackson in the second part of the show with the whole Mike Florio situation as well. But this is like typical, right? This is something that we're used to with Lamar Jackson. And I just don't understand the benefit in doing this if you're Dan Orlovsky where it just felt like he had a pre-planned agenda here. I mean, that's what it feels like, right? Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but like with all the stuff with the Josh Allen and all that stuff. And it's sad because Dan used to be like a very like ride or die guy for Lamar, and it feels like forever ago, but like he would consistently praise Lamar for a time. And then obviously like the MVP stuff came and the Josh Allen stuff came, and that all kind of came by the wayside. Dan has obviously come on multiple times since that whole stuff with the Allen and the MVP stuff and said he loves Lamar, this, that, and the other, which again, he ended up having to eat his own words because they brought Dan Orlovsky back on after this. And Dan was kind of just like, hey, I love that Lamar is there. This is the second iteration of Lamar. All this stuff, it's new, the face of the franchise. I think it matters. But that's what it should have been in the first place, right? There should have been no, oh, well, it sounds like he's not going to be there. It should have just been, hey, maybe we can wait a little bit to figure out whether he's going to be there or not, and then do something on it. So I don't know. It's a very weird situation to me. And honestly, you want to know who comes out looking the best? Is Lamar, right? Again, it feels like Dan Orlovsky and these people are just waiting to jump on Lamar. Ooh, he's not there. Oh, let's get into this. Oh, hey, we're going to just throw Lamar to the wolves here. But again, he shows up and makes Dan Orlovsky eat his words. Dan Orlovsky looks horrible in this situation, right? He looks terrible. And Lamar comes out on top. Lamar wins. Like, he wins again here, right? There was that interaction with Lamar and Orlovsky, what was it, a couple weeks ago, where Lamar responded to what Dan Orlovsky had to say, and Dan was like, you're right, Lamar, you're right, or something along those lines. Lamar wins again, right? It's this weird thing where this is just like basic, in my opinion, of like, can we not just, I'm not sure, again, I doubt that Dan Orlovsky and ESPN or whatever knew that 6 minutes later there was going to be a video of Lamar out there, but we know the Ravens start their workouts today, right? We know that there's going to be some iteration. If Lamar's not in a video, you can make an assumption maybe, but that's still probably not smart. So like, why even risk it? And again, I truly believe this because there is some agenda being pushed. It's not just Orlovsky, by the way, but I mean, we've seen it. And again, Orlovsky's lost a lot of credibility here with this. Obviously, the Mendoza and Ty Simpson thing got put on a very national stage where he questioned what big games Fernando Mendoza had won on Pat McAfee and got grilled on it and fried on it by McAfee and crew. And did we not just watch Mendoza win the national championship 3 months ago or however long it was? Like, that's ridiculous. And then even the stuff with Lamar and Allen was on like more of like Ravens and Bills fans timelines, where like obviously Bills fans are getting all the love from Dan Orlovsky, and now it's Josh Allen, and then Lamar and the Ravens fans, or Dan Orlovsky was pushing it down. But I think this incident got on everybody's radar, and it just, again, this is typical for Lamar Jackson. So I'm glad that Lamar was there. I'm glad that Dan Orlovsky had to eat his words here. It was a bad look, and it's just unfortunate because this is kind of what Dan Orlovsky is known for now, particularly in Baltimore. When he does breakdowns, I think he's very insightful with them. I think he has very good football knowledge. Like, that stuff is there. But it's this kind of stuff where it's just like, you talk about like purple colored glasses. Like, he has the opposite. It's like negative Lamar glasses. Like, can we just take that off for a second? And, there are moments where he'll praise Lamar and say this and that, but you can't just like say all these like little good things about Lamar or say this and then like expect to just get a pass when you say this type of stuff or put these type of narratives out there. Like, oh no, but I said I loved Lamar on March 17th at 2:32 p.m. No, like, that doesn't matter when you're putting out narratives that are, even if it's not meant to be intentional, the narrative of, oh, hey, he's not going to show up. It's looking like he's not going to show up. Like, what type of message does that send when you don't have the information? So this shouldn't have even been a story in the first place. Like, I don't even know why this is like such a big deal about it, where, hey, has Lamar shown up to every like OTA or workout or, voluntary thing the Ravens have ever had? No. Has he forfeited workout bonuses? Yeah. But at the end of the day, like, we can talk about how, if Lamar's not there or he hasn't been there. We've talked about it on the show. Yes, disappointing, but it is his decision. So I'm not going to bash him out there if he's not, and he was obviously, but even when he hasn't been, I haven't been like, Lamar, this terrible leader. No, I mean, it's disappointing, but it's his decision. I think that's very rational. It just feels like in the situation with Lamar, it just goes so far in the negative direction. And again, the reason we talk about these things here on the show is because I'm not going to let it slide. Right? I'm not just going to say, oh, hey, Dan Orlovsky tried to start a narrative before knowing anything. And again, it's not just an Orlovsky thing either. Like, I'm not trying to single him out, but this particular segment is about Orlovsky. We'll get to Mike Florio in the second part of the show. But it's like this happens all the time with national media. And then again, like you don't hear, and I'm not using like this particular situation, I'm just talking in general. You don't hear the same stuff for Burrow or Allen or any of these other guys. And again, like Mahomes has the championship thing, all that stuff, I get it. But for guys who are either in the same boat, who don't have a ring like Lamar, who haven't made the Super Bowl, et cetera, and I know Burrow has, but like those are guys who are also chasing a championship. And, you know, again, with workouts and OTAs, that's a conversation in its own, but I'm talking very generally. This just is what it is with Lamar. And it's unfortunate, but it's stuff Lamar has dealt with, you know, for his entire pro career, college, like, you know, dating back however far he want to. But you know what? Hey, he showed up at workouts and he wins in this case. So Lamar making Dan Orlovsky eat his words, but he also made Mike Florio scramble a little bit, it looks like. So coming to the second part of the show, we'll talk about that situation and a lot more coming up on Locked On Ravens. This episode is sponsored by Betterhelp. Financial stress is something a lot of people are carrying right now, and it's not just about numbers. It can affect your sleep, your relationships, and your overall mental health in ways that build up over time. And the reality is, struggling with money doesn't mean you failed sometimes. It just means you haven't had the right kind of support. It's something I've thought about, how easy it is to put pressure on yourself financially without really talking about it, the stress that comes with trying to figure everything out on your own, the expectations you feel to have everything together, and how that pressure can spill into other areas of your life. Therapy isn't about financial advice. It's about working through the stress, the anxiety, and the emotions that come with it. With over 30,000 licensed therapists and more than 6 million people served, BetterHelp makes it easier to get matched and start focusing on what you need. When life feels overwhelming, therapy can help. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage for you Monday through Friday, twice per day, 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. Eastern Time, plus bonus episodes, instant reactions, watch-alongs, the squad show, and the Everyday Club, where you can get some extra add-on content like weekly Q&As, ad-free episodes, access to a Discord server, and a lot more. So be sure to check out the link in the description down below, as well as on the Locked On Ravens page on the Locked On website. We talked about Dan Orlovsky and the Lamar Jackson making him eat words situation from showing up to the first day of Ravens workouts. Well, it seemed like Lamar showing up to workouts also sent Mike Florio scrambling a little bit, where obviously Mike Florio, I think, has been one of Lamar's loudest critics over the course of his career. And when Lamar showed up to workouts, there was an article put out by Mike Florio that read, Lamar Jackson has shown up for Ravens offseason program. How long will he stay? This is unbelievable. I mean, this is a day in the life of Lamar Jackson, right? It's Lamar gets questioned all week by the national media. Oh, he's probably not. What if he doesn't show up? He's probably not going to show up. We're going to get on him if he doesn't, all this stuff. And then, hey, guess what? Lamar shows up. That's great. You know, yeah, that's what everybody wanted him to do, right? And then the goalposts just shift. They shift to something else. It's now not about him being there. Oh, hey, that's great. Makes a really good, like, oh, Lamar showed up. Really good, positive Lamar Jackson piece. There always has to be something negative associated with Lamar Jackson from some of these people. And it's ridiculous. Like Mike Florio, I don't know if he was joking or not, but I think it was a year or two ago where he's like, I wish Lamar and I could be friends or whatever. It was like something along those lines. This is why Lamar doesn't mess with Mike Florio, right? Why he did the whole Mike Flores thing and like, or Flores, whatever it was, and had like that beef with him after the 49ers game where Florio was just going in on, you know, Lamar and the Ravens and all. If this is the Super Bowl, it's going to be like all these like expletives and all that. Like, this is it. There just can barely be anything ever. I almost gone as far as to say never positive with Mike Florio on Lamar Jackson. And I mean, some of the stuff in this article was literally like within one sentence. The first sentence of this article is quarterback Lamar Jackson showed up for the first day of Coach Jason Minder's first offseason program. How long will Jackson stay? That's like, there was no acknowledgement of like, oh, Lamar's showing this great, like, oh, he's great. He's showing up. That's what we wanted him to do. That's great. And then, you go down the line a little bit and he said, quote, for now, Lamar is there. And the Ravens social media team has opted for positive reinforcement. Still, how long will he stay? So just doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on the negatives. Florio got blasted for this, by the way, as well. And Florio kind of spun it into like a contract situation thing where he was trying to make it like, oh, well, we're going to see how much Lamar feels about the contract. He said it's a, quote, a key barometer regarding Jackson's current attitude towards the team at a time where he's still trying to get a contract that reflects the significant changes to the market and the salary cap since he signed his current contract in 2023. And again, like there's literally no acknowledgement. Like at least Dan Orlovsky said like, hey, Lamar's there. That's positive. Like at least there was that from Dan where at least he ate his words and said like, yeah, like I like that he's there. With Mike Florio, he had the opportunity to do something positive with it and say, oh, Lamar is there and still put a question in about, oh, if he stays for X amount of time. He didn't have to like not talk about, well, maybe if he leaves, what is that going to say? But there was the problem is the headline was negative. There was no positive reinforcement. Again, like Lamar doesn't have to be babied or coddled or like anything like that. But again, it's different narratives for different quarterbacks. Different guys get different treatment. And for me, that's the problem where if you're going to hold Lamar to a certain standard, generally, right, you have to hold the other guys in his tier to that standard as well. Or if you don't want to place him in that tier, then hold him to a lower standard, right? But what these people want to do, what people who don't like Lamar Jackson or want to make narratives about him want to do is say Lamar is like hold him to these unbelievable, like one of the greatest of all time quarterback standards where anything you do negatively or like any play or whatever is wrong, like keep you under a microscope like that. They want to hold him to that incredibly high standard, but they also don't want to give him the respect he deserves and say he is in that tier of quarterback and treat him like he's in that second tier or sometimes even third tier. And they want to have it both ways. And that's not how this goes. And again, like we should be talking, it shouldn't even be a story in the first place, honestly. Like the whole Lamar showing up thing, like it'd be great if he was there. It'd be disappointing if he wasn't. That's how it should be. Lamar showed up. That's great. He's there. That's awesome. But there's just been so much talk about it over the course of the last, however far you want to go back and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, why? Why is this the case with him where we can't just celebrate a moment? Instead, it has to be we're making up narratives and we're shifting the goalposts and all this different stuff. So it's pretty crazy. And I'm sure there will be more of it. And we'll just have to see. Because, again, the second Lamar Jackson leaves, if he does, again, I'm not saying he's going to, but if he does, everyone's going to jump on it. Everyone. And, if he's there for a week and a half and then leaves for, I don't know, a day or two or however long that would be. Oh, Lamar doesn't want to do this. He doesn't want to win. He's not competitive. It's just all this stuff over and over again. So, it's been a while since we've had one of these, like, Lamar, like, I guess national media talking point episodes. I'm actually not sure how long it's been, but we've had plenty of them on here before. And again, I want to come on here and talk about it and, defend a guy that, again, like, no one is perfect. Like, Lamar deserves criticism when it is due, right? When he makes a bad play or something happens or, like if he didn't show up to workouts, we would have talked about how it was disappointing, right? Like we would have had that conversation. But at the end of the day, it just feels like there are many more things that are spun negatively about Lamar Jackson than other guys in the tier that he is in. And they want to hold Lamar to that huge standard, but not treat him like he is that caliber of player. So that's where it kind of rubs me the wrong way. And, I say it every time I kind of end these off as like, I hope it changes. But in reality, it's honestly probably looking more like what Dan Orlovsky said about Fernando Mendoza, right? Where if Lamar wins the Super Bowl, that'll be more of the conversation. Oh, what game does Lamar win? Right? That would be more of the conversation than it would be that I have hope that it would change at this point, because we're in year 9 now. So it's been a while. We're coming up in the final part of the show. We'll shift gears and talk about the draft getting closer for this team and talk about what the Ravens could have in store for the next couple of weeks preparing to take their next batch of rookies. So stay tuned. Plenty coming up on the show. Moving along, Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have 5 days a week plus more daily Ravens coverage for you. So if you have a friend or a family member who likes the Ravens, is a Ravens fan, or just wants some daily Ravens coverage, be sure to send them our way here on Locked On Ravens. You can also follow me on social media at KostrikeR34 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, the whole 9 yards. A little bit of a spirited Lamar Jackson episode today. Again, I'm very happy he showed up. I'm very glad a lot of these guys showed up. And actually, I have a list. I read this off on Locked On Ravens PM. I didn't actually update it because I didn't see any other videos or pictures. Essentially, what I did is I looked through, because we didn't get an official attendance report for these workouts. So I sifted through all the videos and pictures and came up with all the faces that I saw. And again, I probably missed a couple, but here's who I saw in these videos and pictures. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers, Malachi Starks, Nick Moore, Andrew Voorhees, Jay Higgins, John Jenkins, Tyler Loop, Tez Walker, Travis Jones, Roquan Smith, Adisa Isaac, Tavius Robinson, Trey Hendrickson, Rashod Bateman, John Simpson, Roger Rosengarten, Kyle Hamilton, Mark Andrews, Aeneas Peebles, Marlon Humphrey, Chidobe Awuzie, and Keon Martin. And again, some of these also came. Garrett Down did a video, and he mentioned some guys were there like Andrews, etc. So I also threw those names in, even if they weren't in a picture or a video, because we heard a mention of them, of guys who were there. So again, really good turnout. Like, shout out to Lamar, shout out to the vets for being there. Really, really good tone to set early on. And we'll kind of see how it all unfolds over the course. Because again, these first 2 weeks are just kind of workouts, meetings, rehab stuff. But then you progress over the course of the offseason. So we'll see how that all goes. But the draft coming up, we've talked a lot about it, right? We've done mock drafts. We've talked about strategies and trade ups and trade downs and what happens. I've kind of gone over it a little bit. It really feels like Vengi Owane is like not boomer, like the boomer bust guy, where if it's him, like, yes, let's go, that's the only guy. But if he's not there, it's like, oh, well, draft is over. I don't believe that. But I think that he is the best possible fit for what the Ravens need right now. He is a very high floor guy. He can start for you immediately. We've had the conversations about who he is as a player. With Spencer Fano, there's a little more risk in terms of kicking him into center or guard if that's what they want to do with him. Grant Barton's a great example in Tampa of what happens with that type of situation. But, I just think Ioane is such a solid piece you can put there and just set him in there. You can forget about it, and he's going to be incredible. Now, again, it's not like doom if the Ravens don't get Ioane. I'd be pretty bummed out personally. But there are other options, and maybe they could go with a position. I mean, I wouldn't be like super thrilled if they went with a corner at 14 or anything like that. I've kind of also gone through the who could potentially fall to Baltimore. And, the names that keep popping up are Jeremiah Love and Kenyon Sadiq. I'd rather them, if it came down to those two and like all the good offensive line options are gone, there's not a good trade back option, you have to stick and pick at 14, and those two guys are the best options on your board, I'd probably go with Love over Sadiq, because I feel more confident in the tight end class later. I talked about this a little bit on the squad show last night, where if you don't get Sadiq in the first round, you can take Stowers in the second or third. Koziol's a late round option. Like, this is a very deep tight end class. And you also have Njoku potentially waiting there for you, assuming, that's still a thing. I don't really know. But, there are also different other things you have to consider, like what types of veterans do you have available on the market compared to draft positioning. Now, again, the Ravens are not only just a draft and develop team, but they're also a BPA team most of the time. So it wouldn't shock me if, we're all thinking, oh, it's going to be O-line, it's O-line. And then they come out of nowhere with a corner pick. Like, it's very possible. I'm not throwing that out of the realm of possibility at all or whatsoever. They might also view a guy more as a guard than maybe other people do, and they take him. Now, the problem is you can't take a tackle at 14 and not kick that guy inside, because at 14, you cannot have a guy that does not play snaps for you. You need to have that instant impact contributor at 14. Again, like an Isaiah World makes a lot of sense out of Oregon in like the 3rd or 4th round because he's coming off an injury. He could be a potential, like, really solid tackle for you, but you're not expecting him to play a ton of snaps, and he has really good potential. So that's a later round option at the tackle spot. I wouldn't be floored if they took a tackle in general over the course of the 3 days, but if you take a tackle like a Freeling or whatever, like you need to find a role for him to play, wherever it is. So that's an interesting conversation as well. There's also the conversations about Dexter Lawrence. We had that on the squad show last night as well, where I would not be shocked if the Ravens do trade down in this scenario and then maybe use draft capital on a deal like a Dexter Lawrence. Again, if you're trading back for more draft capital, you need to get rid of it somehow as well. So that's another one where I'm just like, don't end this draft with 13 picks. 11 is already too many. I'm in that like 8 to 9 sweet spot right now in terms of total picks. So there's a lot that could happen. But again, as I have mentioned many times, and I want to continue to hammer home this point, this is not a year for you if you're the Ravens to fall in love with the tools and the potential, right? Go for the higher floor. Not that those guys don't have high ceilings, but go for the higher floor prospects, guys that you can plug and play immediately. We know the Ravens have fallen in love with those toolsy guys, and there's a time and a place for it. I do not believe this is the time or the place for it. So there's the mock draft. Well, there's our draft conversation. Now we're going to get into a mock draft really quick as we do our watcher and listener mock drafts. And we're going to get into one from Cam, who has the Ravens taking at 14, Ruben Bain. That's crazy. I love this. Edge from Miami, Manuel Pregnon, the offensive lineman from Oregon at 45, Keelan Rutledge, the interior offensive lineman from Georgia Tech at 80, Oscar Delp, tight end from Georgia at 115, Chris McClellan, the D lineman from Missouri at 154, Hezekiah Massis, the corner from California at 162, Dazon Stribling, the wide receiver from Mississippi at 173, Nick Singleton, the running back from Penn State at 174, Nate Berkacher, tight end from Texas A&M at 215, Brett Thorson, punter from Georgia at 231, and J. Michael Sturdivant, the wide receiver from Florida at 250. Well, I think that you just win the mock draft lottery here with Ruben Bain at 14. I don't know how you got that. Not once have I gotten Ruben Bain at 14 in any of my mock drafts. So I am very jealous about that. But I think that him and Pregnon, which was actually my 1-2 in the mock draft I did yesterday, would be a dream. It'd be an absolute dream. I don't care about the short arm stuff with Bain. He can play, he can produce. I'm not getting caught up in that. And Pregnon is someone who I think, like Ioane, to a bit of a lesser extent, obviously, but I think he can be a set it and forget it player at guard for you. I think he can be that guy. And then you double down here with the offensive lineman, which I think is a good strategy because, again, I think at least 2 of your first 4, if not 2 of your first 5 picks should be offensive linemen in some way, shape, or form. Oscar Delp is a really solid mid-round option at tight end. I think really there are a bunch of guys you can't go wrong with in this class. All have different skill sets, obviously, but Delp is one of those guys I think can be a solid option. Then again, doubling down at tight end. In this situation, you probably wouldn't go and sign an Njoku, but again, taking McClellan, you could still go McClellan and then Reader, even if Matabike comes back, right? Either way, I think that's solid depth for you. If you just take a mid-round D lineman, I think that's great because the Ravens love taking D linemen anyway. So that's there. And then Thorson is someone who can compete with Luke at the punter spot, and you can have a nice competition between those guys. I think that'd be really good. And again, like whoever wins that, all right, that's cool. It's not just like you're handing the job off. Double wide receivers, I'm not super sure. I mean, I guess there's a possibility that like one of these guys could just make it on the practice squad. You just get the like priority over him in terms of risking an undrafted free agency thing. But I would assume they're going to bring in at least 1 vet. They have 4 now. So I think 2 is putting them at 7, which obviously for me, I'm always at 6 in the wide receiver department in terms of the sweet spot. So again, like if it's your last pick in the draft, it's not like something to get super crazy over, but maybe I would go with like a special teams linebacker at that spot instead or something along those lines. But this is pretty solid overall. Again, like you get a running back to replace Keaton in here as well. So I like this one a lot, especially because you get a corner in here, which I think is very realistic for the Ravens to take a corner, even maybe earlier than 162. I mean, I would not be shocked if they took a corner in the first 2 days of this draft. Like I have a feeling about that one, but I like this one again. Like Bain and Pregnon, it just wins it automatically. You don't have to convince me of anything else, but there's a lot of solid other depth here that I like. So shout out to Cam for this one. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. On the web, be sure to like and subscribe button in video form and follow along with subscribe in audio form for 5 days a week, plus more of daily Ravens coverage and content. Coming up, we will have Locked On Ravens PM at 6 p.m. Eastern time, and then regularly scheduled programming 6 a.m. tomorrow. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.